Do, 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 do. Hello, welcome to Heaven Homesteading. My name is Andrew. It has been 2 months since I last uploaded a video to YouTube, and one of the reasons is that I had technical issues. My headset that I was using broke, and so I needed to get a new one. And so now that I have one, we can move on. Today, we are continuing the discussion on creation, which is part 6B of the 28 fundamentals of the Seventh-Day Adventist Church. Before we dive into Genesis 5, we need to understand the backstory which is portrayed in Genesis 4. It starts with the story of two brothers named Cain and Abel. Genesis 4:1, Eve says, I have gotten a man from the Lord. Eve was referring to Genesis 3:15, where God was talking to the serpent. God said, I will put enmity between thy seed and her seed. It shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. It was the first prophecy pointing toward Jesus Christ. She thought that Cain would be the Messiah, but out of jealousy, because Abel had offered a better sacrifice, Cain killed his brother Abel. The rest of the chapter showed the line of Cain. Now that Cain had murdered Abel, Cain became a fugitive and a vagabond. The line of Christ needed to be started anew. That line was started by Seth. As a side note, as Cain had murdered his brother, Cain was afraid that everyone that findeth him shall slay him. He was pleading to God, and God answered his prayer. He put a mark on Cain. Though we do not know what the mark of Cain was, I'm certain that it was unique to Cain. In other words, that mark was not passed on to further generations or giving him immortality so that he would suffer for eternity.
Genesis 5, 1 through 8. Verse 1. This is the book of the generations of Adam. In the day that God created man, in the likeness of God made he him. Verse 2. Male and female created he them, and blessed them, and called their name Adam, in the day when they were created. Verse 3. And Adam lived 130 years, and begat a son in his own likeness, and after his image, and called his name Seth.
When God created Adam, the Bible states that he was made in the image of God. But in Genesis 5:3, it is written that Adam begat a son in his own likeness after his image. Now man no longer is in the likeness of God. Humans do not have the natural tendency toward the character of Christ. And this line is what God is willing to have his only begotten Son to be born into. Jesus had been born after the flesh of man so that he would prove that with the help of the Holy Spirit it is possible to overcome the temptations and sins of the flesh.
Verse 4. And the days of Adam after he had begotten Seth were 800 years, and he begat sons and daughters. Verse 5. And all the days that Adam lived were 930 years, and he died. Verse 6. And Seth lived 105 years and begat Enos. Verse 7. And Seth lived after he begat Enos 807 years and begat sons and daughters. Verse 8. And all the days of Seth were 912 years, and he died. Genesis 5, 9 through 16. Verse 9. And Enos lived 90 years and begat Canaan. Verse 10. And Enos lived after he begat Canaan 815 years and begat sons and daughters. Verse 11. And all the days of Enos were 905 years, and he died. Verse 12. And Canaan lived 70 years and begat Mahalaleel. Verse 13. And Canaan lived after he begat Mahalaleel 840 years and begat sons and daughters. Verse 14. And all the days of Canaan were 910 years, and he died. Verse 15. And Mahalaleel lived 65 years and begat Jared. Verse 16. And Mahalaleel lived after he begat Jared 830 years and begat sons and daughters. Genesis 5, 17 through 24. Verse 17. And all the days of Mahalaleel were 895 years, and he died. Verse 18. And Jared lived 162 years, and he begat Enoch. Verse 19. And Jared lived after he begat Enoch 800 years and begat sons and daughters, and all the days of Jared were 962 years, and he died. Verse 21. And Enoch lived 65 years and begat Methuselah. Verse 22. And Enoch walked with God after he begat Methuselah 300 years and begat sons and daughters. Verse 23. And all the days of Enoch were 365 years. Verse 24. And Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him.
In Genesis 5, Enoch is briefly mentioned. It tells that he was the son of Jared and the father of Methuselah. Methuselah was the grandfather of Noah. The significance of Enoch is that he had a relatively short life compared to those who came before and after him. In Genesis 5:24, it is written that Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. Enoch had developed a deep relationship with God. At some point, his relationship with God was so great that God took him directly to heaven. Death does not have a 100% success rate. Enoch is only one person in the Bible that has succeeded in overcoming death. Elijah also was taken by a fiery chariot into heaven. Moses may have died, but he was then resurrected and taken to heaven. At the point when Jesus died on the cross, there was a great earthquake, and there were many who returned from the grave. Jesus has complete power over death. There are other stories in the Bible that show Christ's power over the grave. But that does not mean that they are the only ones. There may have been other people who have been raised from the dead or have been translated direct to heaven. This, of course, is speculation. I could not prove this.
Genesis 5:25 through 32, verse 25. And Methuselah lived 187 years and begat Lamech. Verse 26. And Methuselah lived after he begat Lamech 782 years and begat sons and daughters. Verse 27. And all the days of Methuselah were 969 years, and he died. Verse 28. And Lamech lived 182 years and begat a son. Verse 29. And he called his name Noah, saying, This same shall comfort us concerning our work and toil of our hands, because of the ground which the Lord hath cursed. Verse 30. And Lamech lived after he begat Noah 595 years and begat sons and daughters. Verse 31. And all the days of Lamech were 777 years, and he died. Verse 32. And Noah was 500 years old, and Noah begat Shem, Ham, and Japheth.
The rest of Genesis 5 lines up the genealogy of Seth unto the birth of Noah's three sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. If you have taken the time to read the Bible, you will know that the sections that deals with the genealogies are tedious. There are reasons that they are there. One reason is that it can be used to build a timeline showing the fact that Earth is a recent creation. The genealogies show that from creation until the Great Flood was 1,659 years. The rest of Genesis can be timelined by comparing one person's age to someone else's age during a known event.
Exodus 20, verses 8 through 11. Verse 8. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Verse 9. 6 days shalt thou labor, and do all thy work. Verse 10. But the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. Verse 11. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it.
So the fourth commandment is the only one that starts with the word remember. If God wrote it in stone that he wants us to remember a certain day, why would he change it? By keeping the Sabbath, we are showing our allegiance to the God of creation. The fourth commandment is the key to God's authority. It is his seal. During creation, God had set one day out of 7 that we may be able to set aside the stressors of our weekly life and be able to commune with him. Does it matter what day of the week we set aside? Absolutely. I watched a video on YouTube by a man who is an atheist. He was trying to explain what Seventh-Day Adventists believe. He talked about how Seventh-day Adventists believe that the earth was created in 6 literal days On the seventh day God rested, and that day was a Saturday. Putting his mocking tone apart, he is absolutely correct. The day God rested had to be a particular day, and based on the sequence of the calendar, has been kept by the Jews for thousands of years, it is on Saturday.
Psalms 19, verses 1 through 6. Verse 1. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament sheweth his handiwork. Verse 2. Day unto day uttereth speech, and night unto night sheweth knowledge. Verse 3. There is no speech nor language where their voice is not heard. Verse 4. Their line is gone out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. In them hath he set a tabernacle for the sun. Verse 5. Which is a bridegroom coming out of his chamber, and rejoiceth as a strong man to run a race. Verse 6. His going forth is from the end of the heaven, and his circuit unto the ends of it, and there is nothing hid from the heat thereof.
The power and majesty of God is written within the world around us. I was once substituting as a special ed aide in a 7th grade science class. The teacher was explaining about evolution and the Big Bang. He made a statement that has stuck with me. He said, everything cannot just pop out of nowhere. His meaning was that God could not exist because matter cannot be created or destroyed, and for God to have created the universe, matter needed to come out of nowhere. This is one of those missed opportunities. I could not undermine his authority in his class, but I could have said something later. The way that I see it is that he had it backwards. If matter cannot be created or destroyed, where did all the matter come from to fuel the Big Bang? With God, who exists outside of time and the universe, everything within the universe did not pop up out of nowhere. God spoke it into existence. Thank you for taking the time to watch my video, and I hope you get some blessing out of what I have said. If you like this video, please hit the like button, tickle the subscription, and ring that notification bell. And I hope you come back for my next video.